Well, I want to thank everyone out there on their phones, on their computers, for checking out my YouTube channel. About 4 years ago, I put my first YouTube channel out into the internet, and the response was really strong, and so that made me want to share more of my information with the public. And over the last 4 years, we've had about 1.3 million views. That's been a lot of fun, and it's really been encouraging for us because it shows there's a lot of need out there for the information that we're sharing. So I just wanted to thank you for taking time out of your busy life to check out our channel. What I have in my hand is the next step in our evolution as a system of trying to communicate ideas to you. It's a book that we've written. It's called Your Genius Body. And really what it is, it's a summary of all the work that we've put into our practice, put into functional medicine over the last about 9 years. So if you like the ideas you see on today's video or some of the other videos on our channel, I would highly encourage you to get your hands on this book. This book is really a summary and a great reference for all the ideas that we use to help our patients as we share in these videos. So you can get this if you go to www.beyondmthfr.com, and you'll have an option there to purchase the book either in paperback, which is always a little easier on the eyes, or you can also download the digital version for your Kindles and iPads. So I hope you enjoy this coming video here, and then please stay tuned for the end. We'll have a special message for you at the end of the video as well.
Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Rostenberg with Beyond MTHFR and Red Mountain Natural Medicine here in Boise, Idaho. And I have a video for you that I think you'll find useful in your research and looking at root causes. And of course, the title for this talk is The Root Cause of Insomnia and Sleep Issues. Is it high or low dopamine? And this concept that I'm going to share with you over the next few minutes is a big reason why patients come into our practice. You can imagine just in the people that you know in your life, your friends, family, how many people you know, even little kids, might not be sleeping correctly. They might not be sleeping enough. They may be unable to get adequate rest even though they're in bed with the lights out and the sound machine on, sometimes for hours waiting to fall asleep. So there's this epidemic out there of sleep issues, and due to the research and the science we use in practice, looking at methylation, looking at neurotransmitter balance, looking at adrenals and hormones and digestive issues, and combining all that together, we've been able to help a whole lot of different people with sleep issues. And there are different kinds. Some people are too sleepy, as you'll hear about, and other people, probably the most well-known type of person is the person who can't sleep enough. And so you're going to see some data today on sleep and the model of what we use to basically understand the root cause and ultimately what you could do to treat it. The biggest factor with not sleeping is that in our life, our hectic, stressful, modern, crazy world, sleep is this important period of our day where we don't worry, we don't think about, our jerk boss or the traffic or the, problems with our family and all the other stressors that we have. We don't think about that. We should just be asleep, resting, and recovering. And it's a time when we detox, when we repair, when we grow. There's a lot of activity that happens during sleep that just simply doesn't happen when we're awake. And one of those things is our immune system. So anybody who's ever lived, a few years has understood what it feels like to be sick and maybe have a tummy bug or have the flu. And we do a lot of sleeping because sleeping allows our immune system to clean our bodies up. The problem is, though, when we don't sleep. So this is some research from a few years ago, basically highlighting that those of you in the audience, those of you listening, who get consistently less than 7 hours of sleep, you have a 300% increased risk of getting the cold. That's not my opinion, that's just the research, and it makes sense, as we'll find as we go today through these slides. But basically, lack of sleep hurts your body's natural killer cell function, which is needed to kill viruses. Another study, a little more recent than the previous one, again, same highlight, same kind of idea here, that people who sleep 6 hours a night or less in this study are 4 times more likely to catch a cold. So sleep affects our immune system. How many people do we treat every day who have a chronic virus, a chronic infection, a diagnosis of a Lyme or some co-infection, some kind of gut issue? Many of our patients are dealing with this, and one of the best things we do for them is not some complicated, protocol for the gut. Sometimes it's just helping them sleep. And by sleeping better, they get better. And this is the connection, that sleeping allows your immune system to function. The converse of that is lack of sleep will absolutely weaken your immunity, especially to viruses. This is the key thing to understand. Viral and chronic virus infections in the lungs, upper, throat, sinuses, chronic cold. You're looking at see how many hours they're sleeping. I bet they're not sleeping enough. Now, as I started to dig into this topic, some great research out there. There's actually, research. We research a lot of fruit flies. They're a good model for clinical research. But even bugs need to sleep, incredibly. Even animals, even little bugs that fly around and, get in your face, they actually have a sleep-wake cycle as well. And what the researchers were able to figure out is that increasing sleep increased resistance to oxidative stress. And what that basically means is sleep is anti-inflammatory. We have a lot of people in our society and in our practice coming to us for help who are greatly inflamed. They have pain, they have swelling, they have aches, they have brain fog and chronic fatigue and other hormonal, blood sugar, thyroid issues that result from chronic inflammation. Every time we help these people sleep better, we make a big improvement in their oxidative stress and their inflammation. And the study says basically that sleep is an antioxidant for the body and the brain. That's what the research says. I love that quote. So, sleep is huge. You guys know that already, but look what the research is saying. It's confirming what we've known for a long time. Now, I used this slide years ago in some of my talks, and it's just a good example of one of the most common problems with people sleeping is that they don't breathe well enough. And you can see right here this uvula that hangs down in the back of the throat. This is the thing that, when a doctor shines a light in someone's mouth and then puts a tongue depressor in there and says, say ah, the thing that's jiggling is this muscle. It's your soft palate. Well, just like any muscle, it can get weak. And as we get overweight and stressed out and we're not eating the right foods for our body, you can start to see in this picture that the uvula collapses, and that basically means it's impossible to breathe through your nose. Well, then your body would rather not suffocate, so it starts breathing through your mouth. And as that begins, it starts a whole process of what we call sleep apnea, and it's actually stressful. It's stressful not to be able to breathe when you lie down. And so even though you might not be awake, you might not be alert, you might be quote-unquote unconscious for several hours, you're not sleeping well. In fact, you can take it to the bank that every night an individual snores is a night that individual did not sleep enough. The fact that they snore means they're not getting enough oxygen. It means there's resistance to the flow of air, which means less oxygen for the brain, which means the brain is less able to rest. Makes sense. But snoring's common. We don't think it's a problem, and I'm here to say it is. And so this research was pointing out that simply that having a sleep apnea, or I would say even snoring, creates heightened sympathetic drive. And those of you that have listened to some of our videos, you understand what that means. It's just heightened fight or flight, adrenal activation. You don't want to have your adrenals turned on while you're sleeping. And so I bring this onto the screen again to talk about this bell curve. This is our baby, the kind of science that we found and put together and put to use in our practice. It's just an absolutely amazing model for helping people. And we have this idea that some people have symptoms of high dopamine and high catecholamines, and then people have symptoms of low. The point is, most people are going to get stuck on either the low end or the high end, although they can experience different symptoms. But in this case, for the next few slides, we're going to talk about people with low catecholamines, who I used to be for a long time. And you'll understand that, there are as many people as there are out there with like insomnia. There's a group of people who sleep too much. And that's not healthy either. It's telling you a story about their brain chemistry through their sleep habits. So dopamine depletion actually increases sleepiness, fatigue, and sedation. You want to make someone like give them brain fog and give them depression and take away their drive, just suck all the dopamine out of their brain. They will become unable to really, wake up with energy and, grab life by the horns, so to speak. And the research is confirming this. When they do experiments and they deplete catecholamines, they take the catecholamines away, they lower dopamine, in other words, it makes people tired. I've experienced it. I'm sure if you think into your group of people that you know, you might know people who sleep at the drop of a hat and have some other, they may also have some of these other symptoms of the low catecholamine person: food cravings, ADD, ADHD, maybe they have anger issues or addictive personality traits and so on. But just understand that low catecholamine people are excessive. I'm going to move this out of the way. They have excessive sleepiness. Just get rid of that altogether. They have excessive sleepiness. And that's what this research is confirming. So another thing to keep in mind is, again, I use the word depression, but yes, low catecholamines equals depression. Low monoamines, low catecholamines. So when you run out of neurotransmitters, that is true that it can cause depression. So that is one definition. The other definition is, if you have too much dopamine or too much serotonin, you can also get depressive symptoms. And I'll explain that in future videos, and I've mentioned that in my book and some other things. But just to keep things simple, there's a relationship, obviously, to brain function and how much dopamine you have in your brain. If you take the dopamine away, you fall asleep. Dopamine is the gasoline that runs your frontal lobe. And when you have decreased frontal lobe activation, you're going to go to sleep like this guy. You're going to wake up with cereal on your face. And again, this is another study published a few years ago that simply was doing, asking the question, what happens when you remove catecholamines? When you suck dopamine out of the brain and deplete it, what happens? Well, people fall asleep. They get really sleepy. I used to fall asleep in the car at the drop of a hat. I'd be driving for 5 minutes and I could fall asleep. I can still get on an airplane. Before the thing takes off, I can be asleep. Don't hold it against me. Just low catecholamines, and I can sleep on planes, no problem. I know some of you out there definitely, as many of my patients relate, they wish they could, but they couldn't. There's no way they've ever been able to sleep on a plane. If that's you, then you're the type of person we're going to talk about on the second half of the video. But again, what we're dealing with here is this idea that depleting catecholamines and removing them from our nervous system is going to have an effect on the sleep-wake cycle. So low dopamine basically means that, let's see, there we go. Sorry to get that slide balanced there. Low dopamine essentially causes sleepiness. So we will get to insomnia here in a minute, but the individuals in your life who are excessively sleepy, have a hard time waking up, they can sleep at the drop of a hat, they can sleep through a tornado, they can sleep through anything. They're telling you through their symptom of excessive sleepiness that they don't have enough dopamine. Okay? Now, in studies where they look at problems like cataplexy, where there's sort of this profound and almost, inappropriate level of sleepiness. These individuals might be awake and talking, and then a minute later they're laying on the floor just like crumpled and passed out and sleeping. They've done this study in dogs. This was 20 years ago, and basically all the medications, all the substances that raised adrenaline, that raised catecholamines, it completely stopped the cataplexy. So I share this with you, and again, here's a newer study, same thing, that amphetamines, right? Amphetamines raise dopamine. That much we do know, and they understood here in this study that taking amphetamines completely suppresses sleep attacks, sleepiness, and cataplexy. I mean, it's kind of the obvious thing. Many people who've never done drugs know that taking speed will make you stay up. But this is the mechanism of how it does that. It raises dopamine. So if dopamine going up means you can't fall asleep, the opposite of that is dopamine going down, causing you to sleep too much. Makes sense, right? Low dopamine is excessively sleepy. High dopamine is what we're going to talk about next. You're not sleeping enough. I love melatonin. We use it all the time in our practice. It's just an absolutely incredible substance. The research coming out, it's amazing. It's nearly without side effect, and the benefits are just enormous. So melatonin is going to stay in the research, stay at the front of the line in terms of really useful compounds for the near future. But really, we're looking here at this idea that in the morning you have high cortisol and adrenaline and dopamine, and as the day goes on towards midnight it drops. But you're supposed to have a corresponding increase in melatonin that carries you through the night and helps you sleep. And many people are melatonin deficient. There's lots of reasons for that: blue light pollution, poor digestion, tryptophan deficiency, inflammation. I could name 20 different reasons why melatonin levels would be low. But really what's unique about this is that dopamine and melatonin are kind of a seesaw, and they act as chemical analogs of day and night. Really, literally, dopamine is the chemical of daytime, melatonin is the chemical of night. Makes sense. You wake up, light hits your eye, you're out in the world, boom, your dopamine goes up. But that's all good and well. What happens if your dopamine stays up and doesn't go down at night, right? What happens if, in terms of this bell curve, if you happen to be a person who, when they're under stress, they go into the high dopamine category? Unfortunately, based on your genetics, your gut, and your nutritional balance and other factors, you will very likely suffer from some form of insomnia. Some of my patients tell me, "Doc, it was a rough time. I was so stressed out. I started to have chronic anxiety. I had a panic attack in the morning, and I literally stayed up without sleeping for 3 nights in a row." I don't know what that feels like. I haven't had that experience. But the fact that that's possible to stay up for 3 nights in a row means that individual, all those symptoms, the anxiety, the panic, the worry, the insomnia, those are all made possible because they have too many catecholamines, they have too much dopamine in their body. Okay? Just that's the model. I keep going back to this, and I'll go back to it in the future. It's a very good model that helps us help our patients. Now, back to the sleep topic. So we've talked about how sleep hurts your immunity. That's a proven concept. We've talked about how people who are excessively sleepy don't have enough dopamine. So now we're going to talk about people who are insomniacs, who can't sleep really to save their life. They're really stuck. So we know that poor sleep is related to the activity of your sympathetic nervous system, right? The nervous system that has dopamine, adrenaline, and norepinephrine as its chemical messengers. So we know that poor sleep quality correlates with increased activity of this fight or flight system. That's what we know, and it's what the research says. We know that catecholamines, the dopamine, the adrenaline, as well as cortisol, are very often elevated at nighttime, which is causing the insomnia in the first place. The idea here is that people with high cortisol and high adrenaline have really bad sleep, and they're groggy, they're dragging for the first half of the day, and they maybe finally start to feel normal in the afternoon. But while that's all happening, they're developing other risk factors like hypertension and other cardiovascular issues because of the stress this places on their body. Having these stress hormones elevated at night means you don't get that restful period to repair. And if you're in a chronic state of fight or flight, you don't get into rest and digest. You don't get to repair yourself. So again, the research saying people who don't sleep well with insomnia have high levels of cortisol and dopamine, which we agree with. And in fact, this is another study showing the connection with cortisol specifically. And those of you who have seen the video we've made on adrenal fatigue, you understand how important cortisol is. I mean, we can't live without this stuff. But again, too much of a good thing becomes no longer a good thing. And so people who are releasing cortisol at 10 o'clock at night and 11 o'clock at night, they've trained themselves sometimes being a night owl. And it's all good and well in the short term, but over long term, your body learns that pattern and then replicates it over and over and over again to your own detriment. So this is just more research saying that people with insomnia have high levels of stress hormones. Could not agree more. People who sleep too much don't have enough stress hormones. That's what I want you to take away from this video. And then last science slide here is that simply, insomnia is associated with high sympathetic arousal and declines of natural immunity. This is really summarizing what I'm saying. Sleep issues, the root cause of sleep issues has to do with how much dopamine and, to a lesser degree, cortisol you're releasing at night. If you have a high amount of dopamine because you have COMT genes, you have MAO genes, you have hidden gut infections, fungal infections, bacterial infections, and other factors that haven't been addressed, your body is very poor at getting rid of dopamine. It's slow at that. And so over time, the dopamine just builds and it begins to interfere with your sleep. And as that takes hold of you, the negative effects on your immune system begin to show up. And so we don't just fix people's sleep when we help them sleep better. We really literally change their life. And I enjoy working with people, helping them accomplish that. So sleep is huge. And, we've talked about the immune component. We've talked about the people who have insomnia due to high dopamine and high cortisol. And again, finally, we have that group who need more support to actually raise dopamine, because there's such a thing as too little. And those are the people who are sleeping all the time and have like an excessive amount of sleep. So this chart I'm sharing with you, again, I'm not prescribing supplements over YouTube, but I just want you to look at, share with you the way we think in our practice. And again, what you see is the bell curve that I showed you earlier with this is the low dopamine people on the left and the high dopamine on the right. The goal here in this group of nutritional components is to increase dopamine synthesis and release. Help them make more dopamine and help it get into the bloodstream. These people need more dopamine. They're sleeping all the time. It's noon. They have lunch. They pass out for 2 hours. They wake up. They go to finish school. They go to basketball practice. They fall asleep in the car. They come home. They're sleeping 15 hours a day, 14 hours a day. It's way too much. It's not normal. And that's because they have low amounts of dopamine and catecholamines. These nutritional components are my favorite tools in the office to raise those molecules in their body, and there's multiple different ways how that works. And then on the right side of the curve, this is probably, again, I probably spend 20% of my time on the left side of the curve working with people with low, and about 80% of the time working on people with high dopamine. It just seems to be a more common problem. So the goal with these nutritional components on the right is simply to improve detoxification of dopamine or prevent the release. So melatonin is an anti-dopamine agent. CBD oil is an anti-dopamine agent. Niacinamide is fantastic. Taurine, magnesium, skullcap. We love these tools. We use them every day, and they absolutely make big differences for people. So knowing how to use these, how much, that's what practice is about. But I'm just sharing this with you so you can get an idea of how we would work a problem like this. So I hope listening to this video that you've gotten a little bit of a different understanding of the importance of sleep. Really, the root cause of insomnia and sleep issues is a dopamine and catecholamine problem. Very, very highly correlated. People who can't sleep, who take hours to fall asleep, who are waking up in the middle of the night, urinating all night long, having this really disturbed sleep-wake cycle, until proven otherwise, they have way too much dopamine. And they need to program a holistic approach to treat that. On the other end of the spectrum, there are people who are, unfortunately, low dopamine, and they have depression, and they have fatigue, and they have brain fog, and they just sleep too much. And they can't stay awake. One group can't stay awake to save their life. The other group can't go to bed to save their life. And you know what? Let's save these people. Let's help them.
Thanks so much for watching. You've made it through the video. Hopefully there's some information here that you can relate to your own life, to your friends, family. I'm just basically sharing with you everything we use in our practice. I don't believe that healthcare should be something that you always have to pay a ton of money to get the information you need. I'd like to get all the information we can out there for free. And that's part of what this YouTube project is all about. So if you like this video, If you like our channel and the information we have, get yourself a copy of this book. But even more than that, if you're somebody out there who's looking for help for yourself, for a loved one, for a friend or family member, you reach out to us. We have a clinic that serves people from over 20 different countries. And we have people traveling from Europe, traveling from all over the United States to see us in person. And we also do work over the internet through a telemedicine practice. So Red Mountain Natural Medicine is the name of our office here in Boise. And if you like what's on this video and you need some help yourself, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll figure out a way to help you get the help you need. Thanks so much, and have an excellent day.